Welcome to episode 19 of the Barnes on Bama podcast. I'm your host, Owen Barnes, and we've got a lot to discuss for you. Actually, welcome to all the new viewers. The last video that we put out actually had a lot of new people coming in, and I'm glad you found the content, and I hope you are interested and, like what you see. If you're interested in anything specific, as I always say, throw it in the comments, shoot me a message on Twitter, on Substack, on any of the platforms. I'm happy. I do read all the comments. I'm happy to put together some information regarding anything that y'all might be interested in. But I actually wanted to start this episode really quickly by making sure everybody knows who I am. Like I said, I do know we have a lot of new listeners. My name's Owen Barnes. I live here in Tuscaloosa. I graduated from the university in 2019. I'm a season ticket holder for basketball. I go to most football games, just depending upon the weather and, things of the sort. I've been a lifelong Alabama fan, from living in the state most of my entire life. Like I said, now I, live in Tuscaloosa and go to as many sporting events as I can. So that's a little bit about who I am. I'm sure y'all maybe have seen me in some of the Crimson Crossover Twitter spaces, or at some sporting events. If you ever do see me or are interested in just chatting, just shoot me a message. I'm happy to, get in contact with Alabama fans, but just wanted everybody that's new to the content to kind of have a little bit of idea of who I am. But let's jump right into the content. We've got some information regarding basketball that has been coming out. There's still been some more information for basketball because, of course, right after I hit stop on the recording last week, some info dropped. So, want to cover the info that dropped from last week. And then I actually want to break down the football recruiting, talk about a little bit more in depth. There was a article that came out by Tony Sakalas earlier this week, and I really liked the information that was put out, and I thought that it's something that I wanted to discuss. And I actually have some people that are a little bit of insiders when it comes to football recruiting and just recruiting for Alabama in general that I plan to bring on the podcast here in the coming weeks that are going to talk about how DeBoer and his coaching staff were able to put together the class they were able to put together. And I thought that this cold summer and, hockey tie-in was going to be a really, really good segue to kind of start that discussion. So let's get right into the show, and let's start with basketball. So for basketball, there's a few things that have happened, as I said, since last week's episode. First things first, the non-conference schedule is now fully set. All of the people on the schedule that we had previously mentioned are the entire schedule. There was one more game to be announced. That game has been announced, and that game that was announced is going to be against Arkansas State. So Alabama is going to be playing, is going to be seeing Brian Hodgson come to town for the second year in a row, and that is going to be, one second, make sure I get my dates correct, and I'm going to pop it up here on the screen for everyone as well, because the university has fully confirmed that that is going to be the final matchup, and that all of the non-conference games are now officially set. So that Arkansas State game is going to be on November the 8th. So, as you'll see here on the screen, the full schedule, as I mentioned, is going to be UNC Asheville on the 4th, Arkansas State on the 8th, McNeese on the 11th, Purdue on the 15th. The university has officially confirmed that Illinois game that's going to be happening in Birmingham on the 20th, Houston on the 26th, Notre Dame or Rutgers on the 27th. The 29th is looking like potentially either Oregon or San Diego State. I do not... North Carolina on the 4th, Creighton on the 14th, North Dakota on the 18th, Kent State on the 22nd, and then South Dakota State on the 29th. So as we mentioned, all of the games are now set. You see, the ones highlighted in red on that schedule are going to be the home games. So as we've mentioned, as we've been bringing them up, the full home slate is officially set, and all of the non-conference games are officially set. We talked earlier in the offseason regarding what the SEC splits were and who was going to be home, away, and then who Alabama was going to be playing both of. So if anybody missed that episode or that recording, if you will, just pop back. There was a couple of episodes ago. I know I clipped it and put it on YouTube as well. So if you don't want to listen to the full podcast, I did clip that and went through all of the people that we're going to be playing in the conference slate and how that breaks down with the new 16-team SEC. The other thing I want to bring up, and I want to give a shout out to Blake Byler for compiling this, is everyone from Alabama who is officially on a summer league roster. Blake Byler put together a list. So I just want to, like I said, want to shout him out on Twitter. And the official summer league list of who is on a summer league roster: Aaron Estrada is playing for the Pistons. Brandon Miller is officially playing for the Hornets. However, he's currently with Team USA Select, so probably not going to be playing much. Clowney's playing for the Nets still. Bediako got picked up by the Magic for the summer league. Keon Ellis is playing on the Kings roster. Alex Reese is actually playing for the Trailblazers roster. Shackelford's playing for the Thunder. Kyra Lewis is for the Rockets. And J.D. Davison for the Celtics. So that is what your summer league rosters currently look like. Obviously with this season, you got Aaron Estrada getting picked up by the Pistons. And then, it's good to see Alex Reese, and Bediako both getting a chance. Reese is somebody that's played overseas for a while and is honestly one of my favorite players that's played at Alabama. I was at that SEC tournament game that him and Herb won for the first SEC tournament under Nate Oates, and it was a really special time. There was a video that we took, one of my friends took, of Alex running through the confetti, with his arms outstretched, and you could just tell how much it meant to him. So Alex is an Alabama guy. He's from Pelham, and just really good to see him, getting a chance at the NBA. I know he's been working hard for something like that. So the next thing I want to mention is the news that broke the same day that my episode came out. So my episode came out last Wednesday, and immediately following the episode coming out, a few hours later, as always, our assistant spot, which I mentioned may be coming, is officially been filled. Or has been filled, let's say. It has not been made official by the university. However, we got a Woj bomb for Alabama basketball. So not something we really expected, but Wojnarowski officially tweets that Alabama is going to be hiring Brian Adams to take over that third assistant spot. Just a quick overview on who Brian Adams is. Brian Adams is a defensive guy. He's coached with Doc Rivers for a huge percentage of his time. He's been with the Clippers organization almost 10 years, has been with the 76ers. And as Pannone mentioned on the Crimson Crossover podcast, he just lives and breathes defense. If you think of Pannone as being that offensive guru, Brian Adams is that guy when it comes to defense. And, this is a staff officially of one of the best offensive minds in the game, potentially one of the best defensive minds in the game, and one of the best recruiters in college basketball, right? Preston Murphy, Pannone, and now Brian Adams really puts together a solid coaching staff. And from everything that I have read, and I will be putting together an article, doing a write-up once the hire is made official, and I'm able to have some time to do some research on Brian Adams. But everything that I have read, everything that I have seen thus far gives me very high hopes as to who Brian Adams is, and what Brian Adams is going to be able to accomplish, here at Alabama. It also brings another coach that has a lot of NBA experience, with Pannone. He was a developmental coach, so he's going to be able to speak to, Alabama, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it. We'll go ahead and kind of segue into it. I mentioned the Crimson Crossover pod. Christian and Charles actually interviewed Ryan Pannone a couple of days ago. And if you haven't had a chance to check it out, I really would recommend. It was about a 30-minute interview with him, and it was a really great job done by them. And it was talking about, Pannone's kind of path to getting to where he's at today. That he talked about his time when he was in China. He talked about, just kind of everything about what led him to be, honestly, kind of the person that he is today, and have some of the philosophies he has today, and also, what has made Alabama successful. And a lot of what he mentioned when you think about how Nate Oates accomplishes things is talking about that Nate Oates obviously is a tireless worker, but that Nate Oates, knows what he wants to do, right? But is more than willing to have if anyone has an opinion or has an idea, if you can back it up with fact, he's willing to change his idea, right? So if you can come with good evidence, like, hey, I think if somebody's playing drop coverage based on this play, this is how I think we should attack it, and here's the reasons why. Here's the film. Here's the whatever as to why I think it would work. It's something, if Nate Oates thinks it over and thinks it will work, he's willing to implement it, right? And it's something that I think that Brian Adams, being a defensive-minded guy, is going to be able to bring in those additional things that was going to be able to change what Alabama has done thus far from a defensive standpoint. Alabama, just because Alabama's defense last season was not what some fans wanted it to be, does not mean Alabama and Nate Oates as a program are unable. For anyone that thinks that, Alabama was the number 3 Ken Palm team 2 of the last 4 years. The 2 teams that won the double SEC title, both were top 5 Ken Palm teams. Nate Oates clearly knows how to coach defense. I think it was purely a personnel, or mostly a personnel thing when it comes to last season. Having Cliff this season obviously is going to change a lot of that. Some comments that Pannone made was there was a specific play that was happening in practice where it was a perfect offensive set. He thought for sure it was going to be an easy layup, and Cliff just comes out of nowhere and erases it. And the way that Pannone mentions it is, Grant Nelson is a capable rim protector, right? Last season, Nick Pringle gave you a ton of effort on that level. Cliff Amore is the top rim protector in the country. And there's just a level, right? There's levels to this when you talk about levels to quality of shooter, to quality of rim protection, to quality of finishing around the rim. This is something that Cliff is incredibly good at. And him as a rim protector increases the overall defense as a team. Another thing that he mentioned that I was unaware of, and I don't know, obviously Nate keeps a lot of these things close to the vest, but he also mentioned that Grant Nelson was apparently injured for a decent percentage of the end of last season. And that Pannone thinks that at Grant Nelson's best, he can absolutely be what we saw in that Carolina game, which is just a takeover player, right? Grant Nelson has 24, 12, and 5 in that game and just takes over. And I think that if you can have, something to that level out of a Grant Nelson, and then Cliff Amore being able to clean it up on the defensive end, especially around the rim, I think that it's a really scary team, and I'm really excited for what this season is to come with Alabama basketball. So that's all I wanted to talk about for Alabama basketball. I really wanted to mention the new coach, that we had the finalized schedule, the summer league rosters, and then, like I said, if you have not had a chance to listen to the interview that Christian and Charles were able to do with Ryan Pannone, I really recommend checking it out. So let's transition over to football. And as I mentioned, so with football, this is actually going to be kind of talking through / giving my opinions of, what has happened with Alabama recruiting thus far. We talked a little bit about recruiting last episode, and kind of 2 big takeaways, right? When you talk about recruiting, is that this season DeBoer has recruited better than a lot of pundits, so to speak, thought he was going to, right? If you've heard Josh Pate talk about that, Josh Pate looks at it as, he thinks that anyone that thought DeBoer was going to be unable to recruit based solely on the fact that he wasn't doing it at Washington was just being short-sighted, and that, there's a potential circumstance where DeBoer, wasn't even going after certain guys that he knew he wasn't going to be able to get while he was at Washington. I think some of that may be coming to fruition. I think there also is a standpoint that Nick Saban left an incredibly good infrastructure in place that allows you to find, get in contact with, and scout some of the best talent in the country. I think it also has to do with Courtney Morgan and all of the people that DeBoer has brought in to be able to help manage the NIL standpoint, to be able to manage the creative standpoint, to be able to manage everything that comes with recruiting in today's college football. I don't think that it's just a standpoint of, hey, somebody wasn't doing well and now they are. I think it's a concerted effort of DeBoer understanding, if you're going to compete at the highest level at the University of Alabama, yes, you're going to have to do well on the game days. You're going to have to be a good game day coach. You're going to also have to recruit, right? At the end of the day, the fans require it. Honestly, the teams require it in order for you to be able to have the best possible potential. Nick Saban obviously was a great game day coach, but he had some of the best players, and it honestly starts there, right? If you don't have some of the best players, it's going to be hard to win those games. And I think one of the big things that when you're looking at, how they've been able to recruit at this level, and it was kind of the creative piece that they decided for this summer, you may have seen a decent number of photos coming out of these recruiting visits, and it's all about cold summer, right? Cold summer is the theme for this year for recruiting, and something you'll notice is there's been a lot of hockey jerseys. And if it's confusing to you because you're like, Alabama has a hockey team, well, that's actually what I want to talk about. And like I said, this article, and I'm going to have it linked in the show notes of this video. So if you are interested in reading the whole article, I really recommend it. Tony Scala's put down on Untitled Illustrated with Rivals. Like I said, definitely recommend reading the whole article. But I'm going to quote a few comments that were in there through this. And like I said, if you are interested in reading the whole thing, give it a read. But so the information is basically that what happened when it comes to the hockey team is there was a hockey player by the name of Joe Hughes, and he's a junior with the university, and he's one of the goalies. And he basically was trying to figure out a way to get more visibility to Alabama's club hockey team. And the way that he thought to be able to get visibility to the club hockey team was have some level of partnership with football, which for anyone that has ever done anything related to the University of Alabama or gone to school here, that's obviously everyone's first thought is, oh, the football team has tons of fans, has tons of people that are interested, has tons of people that watch its everything that it does. If I can have some level of connection with the football team, it will help. And so he began thinking, hey, what can I do to potentially partner with the football team? And he was able to get introduced to a guy by the name of Robbie Pirano, who is an associate director for recruiting for the university. And he told him about the cold summer being the current kind of theme for this season. And the cold summer, Walt Brock, who's the director of creative, said that from a and this is his direct quote from that article, from a cold standpoint, it was more that we're going to surprise a lot of people. We're going to flip a lot of guys. Instead of it being a hot summer, it's more of a cold summer because our guys are going to surprise you. So then they got to talking, and Brock kind of immediately knew that this was a perfect connection because his other quote goes, obviously they have the script A jersey, but when I saw the one that had Frozen Tide on it, after I saw it was like, oh man, this is meant to be. We always want to do different things with our recruits. From a fashion standpoint right now, it's kind of in. A lot of people are wearing hockey and lacrosse jerseys, so it's been a huge hit. They really added the additional flair to the recruiting weekends and put an emphasis on the cold summer, right? So the reason, like I said, the reason I want to mention this is a standpoint, and it's something that you're seeing current players, that are kind of buying into. It's seeing something that you're seeing the creative team put stamps of approval on. The incoming recruits love it. It's honestly, and this is a completely different thing, but it's similar to Roll Tide Willie, right? And the reason I say that is no matter what the average fan thinks of Roll Tide Willie, or no matter what the average fan thinks of the football players wearing hockey jerseys and ski goggles, the recruits and the current players like it. So if the recruits and the current players like it, then it's something that they're going to want to do, right? The team is taking advantage of, and having this be truly player-led, right? So they're taking the feedback from what the recruits and what the players enjoy and don't enjoy, right? This is a standpoint where, obviously this is something that Courtney Morgan and Walt Brock and Robbie Prano were able to put together and, say, hey, this is kind of our thoughts for cold summer, and I'm sure there were discussions with players and then recruits like, hey, this is what we're thinking. And now you're seeing most of the recruits, and I would venture to say almost all of them, including Justice Hill, who recently committed, and he wasn't actually mentioned last episode. I completely forgot to mention him. But Alabama pulls him off from in-state Ohio State. He commits to Alabama, one of the top edges in this upcoming class. But, in his commitment was a post with the Frozen Tide jersey. A lot of these guys, the posts that they're posting, the photos that they're sharing from their official visits are wearing the hockey jerseys. So clearly the recruits enjoy it, right? Clearly this is hitting a spot where the recruits enjoy the idea of cold summer. They want to join the movement. They like what DeBoer and Courtney Morgan are preaching, and it's something that they want to be a part of, right? And I know that is at least a decent part of how they've been able to be so successful in this short period of time. Like I said, I am going to be interviewing some guys coming up here in the coming weeks, and they're going to give us a little bit more insight as to, specifically how DeBoer was able to kind of lock down some of these higher profile guys, whether it be the flip with Keon Russell or, just how they've been able to knock down currently the number 2 overall recruiting class, because coming into this season and coming into the position that DeBoer was in, he was under a shortened time frame because many of the players that he was recruiting were not players he was recruiting while at Washington. And obviously some of the guys that were previously committed or were looking at Alabama thinking they were going to be playing for Nick Saban. When now you're not going to be playing for Nick Saban and you're going to be playing for Kalen DeBoer, it's a completely different coaching style. It's a completely different coaching staff. It's a completely different offense and defense, right? So it's a standpoint of you have to fully convince these players from the start of, hey, this is why we still want you to come to Alabama. And this is why we still think you're a good fit, right? And so, I really want to talk to some people. Like I said, I really think that the information coming out soon will be something that everyone is interested in. If anyone also is interested, I have been putting out some articles on the Substack. Most recently, the articles on the Substack are breaking down all of the newcomers for the Alabama basketball team. There have been 2 articles come out so far with Houston Mallett and Chris Youngblood. I'm going through all of the transfers first. Those episodes are coming out every Tuesday. My plan is to have these YouTube videos coming out every Wednesday. And so if you are interested in that, please subscribe to the Substack for the article write-ups. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel for all of these videos. And like I said, if there is anything else that you are interested in hearing or seeing me do a write-up for or a video about, please send it to me. I'm happy to do the video. I'm glad everyone's enjoying the content. And if you do have any other questions, please reach out. But if not, I will see everyone in the next video. Peace.